It's way too close.
What's going on?
Connor, have you had hold the spoon?
Having it right now, man.
Oh man, I had a feeling that you would be. That's so cool. I love when we hang out like this. This is a really good time. You remember me, right?
I remember you. I actually saw you today, oddly enough. It's been months, but I saw you today.
It has been months. Well, for those that don't know, I'm Ryan. I am an event specialist over at the Bruery, and I'm wearing a couple different hats during these trying times, as I'm sure everyone else is, but we're also trying to have a good time, so that's why we're here this afternoon. Connor, you want to introduce yourself, bud?
Yeah, sure. I also try on a few of Ryan's hats. Have a hand in a lot of pots, as you will, but main focus obviously being the website, getting all the product up for everybody, managing our membership, making sure all the beer you want is available when we can get it to you. So fun stuff.
Keep that website nicely stocked so people can get in on local delivery, right?
Right.
Local delivery. Man, the delivery
shipping.
radius. I mean, look at this. Look at that for local delivery. That radius. Are you kidding me? For Southern California, Connor, that's pretty wild, man. There's almost no excuse to not be ordering these beers right now. And I even heard if you sign up for preservation, we'll drop the box off to you. How cool is that?
Right. Local delivery.
Man.
We do shipping in California, parts of Nevada as well. So.
Oh man, I'm so glad we met up today to talk about this kind of stuff. Have you had Yayas? That one just went public.
I have a can in the fridge, but I haven't had it yet.
Oh man, you got to swing by. Yeah, Yayas. That thing is available to the public this week. I just picked some up for myself, and then man, Hold the Spoon now available in Whole Foods and I guess good retailers. Only the good ones, but good retailers all around California. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, we also
man, I don't know.
Public this week can also get their hands on Rhubarb and Spontanaheim, the newest Spontanaheim.
Man, that's a lot of beers. That's a lot of really good beers. But you know what? We're not here to talk about a lot of really good beers. We're here to talk about, I guess, more specifically the one, which is great. Do you remember Andrew? It's been so long since I've seen him.
Yeah, I think he had a hand in this beer.
Andrew.
How's it going, guys?
What's up, Andrew?
What's up, man? Welcome to the Sticky Boy party.
Another day. Sticky Boy party. Yeah.
Man. Those new crawlers. Have you seen these things, Andrew?
Yeah, I have. What
a beaut. Look at that.
Yeah.
Unreal. What are you up to today, Andrew?
Spent most of the day working from home on basically future recipes for later this year in 2021 and catching up on a bunch of stuff. And then, putting out some fires, and now I'm drinking beers with you guys.
Yeah, good stuff. You had a friend that was going to join us today, right?
Yeah. A friend, an acquaintance, a master of a different field, so to speak. Jeni of Jeni's Ice Cream. We're honored to have her. So hopefully
we are honored to have her.
Hi.
Jeni.
This all feels like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It's so perfect. Hi.
It is.
Come on in.
Come on in.
Yay.
Jump on in, Jeni. The water's great.
It's so good. How's it going?
How are you?
Good.
I'm doing great. I'm really doing great. I've got Cosmic Crush, apricot sour,
awesome.
which I love. I love.
Awesome. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit for those that might not know you?
Sure. Well, I'm Jeni Britton Bauer. I started Jeni's Ice Creams in 2002. It's actually my second ice cream company. So I walked out of art class in 1996 and started making ice cream that sort of told stories in our farmers market here in Columbus, Ohio. And Jeni's we started in 2002, and we make ice creams with, just like you guys do, beautiful ingredients from makers and growers and producers we know. I think of our company like a fellowship, like Lord of the Rings fellowship. where everybody does something awesome, and like together we become something greater than the sum of our parts, and you can taste it. And so that's it. Yeah, we've been rocking and rolling for all these years, getting better every year. Try to make ice cream, no stabilizers, emulsifiers, kind of in a way that we like. I like to ask the question, like when we talk about like innovation, like what can ice cream be now that it couldn't be before? And of course that's flavor and even like ingredients, because we can now sell directly to people and we can make lots of different flavors that maybe you couldn't have the kind of array that we have now. But also it's like thinking like a molecule and getting in there and thinking like, can we make ice cream without stabilizers now? Can we make ice cream with grass pastured milk? I mean, that takes like really rearranging the whole dairy industry. It's not an easy thing to do, but these are long-term questions that we started asking a long time ago, and we sort of bring to life very slowly over time. So that's just a little bit about me. And I studied art, but I became a scientist, I think. When you're an entrepreneur, you do a whole bunch of different stuff, and I love every minute of, well, that's not true. I mean, I love even the hard stuff, I should say, because it is hard to be a founder, but it's been such an adventure, like Frodo.
No, totally.
I must say that Jeni's ice creams are absolutely incredible. Every single one I've had probably about 10 or 11 different types by now that they've all been exceptional. And then talking to some of my friends outside of the brewing industry before this, like, oh, we've been doing these virtual happy hours. We're having Jeni of Jeni's ice cream on this week, and they're like, "Oh my god, I love Jeni's. It's like the only ice cream we eat." So, and
awesome. I love it.
Including my parents actually too. Like,
it was a really hard day when we were coming up with.
It's definitely more
with blackout. Sorry, we're talking over each other. That was a really hard day, just sitting around eating like 15 different ice creams, figuring out which one we were going to make this year.
Yeah, we've had similar days with your beers, where we get like all of them in, and we're just like, we get to just drink all of them and then decide what to use for ice cream. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. We're going to bring Daniel in. I think he's going to talk a little bit about innovation pipeline when we get down the road.
Ooh, that sounds exciting. Andrew, I mean, we still we never really touched on how our relationship formed. Do you kind of want to talk a little bit about that? The brewery, Jeni's, how we came together?
I can talk to it from my angle, and then maybe Jeni from hers. But so we this whole The Spoon is the second iteration of this. Both versions are inspired by specific flavors that Jeni has brands of. The first one that we did last year was actually a blonde base beer with some sort of peanut character and chocolate character that was kind of modeled after their salted peanut chocolate Fleck, if I remember that name correctly, for the ice cream brand. And then this year's version is based off the blackout chocolate cake recipe. But we at the brewery, we've had kind of a long history of working with people outside our industry, would be winemakers or with chefs. And at the beginning of last year, or probably even the year before, actually, we were talking about, who could we pair with outside of our industry, and we were thinking about chefs initially, and then through partnerships with our company, we had an introduction with Jeni's ice cream. Tried some of their ice creams, thought it was fantastic, so we reached out to the Jeni's family, and yeah, they agreed to formulate a beer with us. So that's sort of our side of things, and it's been great to do a second partnership like this. So
yeah, it's so fun. Cool. And I would say also that I've always loved drinking beer with ice cream. It's a great pairing. I mean, it's because of the bubbles.
I said the magic word.
Yeah. It like washes away the butter fat, but also sort of blends perfectly with ice cream. And it's not something that people think about very often, how perfect it is to actually drink while you're eating ice cream too. It's always been one of my favorite things to do.
So how would you go about coming up with your pairings, I guess? Like, how in your mind do you have, like, how would you create the perfect pairing, like a beer and some ice cream?
I mean, I would taste a lot. And I always feel like, if it feels right, it probably is right. And so then when you're like actually sort of drinking it and that's kind of how I go. I let that sort of lead. I mean, there's also like, if something's maybe a heavier flavor I might pair with something a little bit lighter, or find some bitterness or something like that can be a little bit of an opposite. Sometimes, depending on the flavor, I might go with it. Like if, one time I had a beer that like had you guys might know about how this works, but like it had a natural banana, like it has like, that's part of the fermentation or whatever it was that came out, this like banana flavor, which was really cool. And I was like, that would be awesome with the peanut butter and honey ice cream. Do you know what I mean? So those are sort of complementary flavors. So it just kind of depends on the beer, but I think it's like you taste it and then you like, use your imagination and then kind of go in and try it.
Yeah, I think a question kind of for both of you guys, for Andrew and Jenny, I think that's really important is, the Bruery and Jenny's are both kind of driven by creativity, innovation, experimentation. What drives you? What do you look for when you're, coming up for a flavor? What do you use for inspiration? I actually see a question in there about what's the most innovative flavor you've done? I guess maybe what's the most creative? I think that's kind of an interesting topic.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Queued it up. We can knock out Jonathan's question too while we're at it.
There you go. Yeah, Jenny, you can take this one.
Oh, well, so right now we actually have a really great, we released it just this week. It's called Sunshine. We didn't, of course, know that we were going to be in a pandemic, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Yeah. And so we made a flavor that's gray in color, but when you eat it, it tastes like sunshine. So it's passion fruit. It's very tart, like sherbet. It almost tastes like rainbow sherbet. And so that was really, really fun, and kind of went crazy this week. We also had one of the like top poets in America write a poem kind of for it, and it just sort of hit people in the right way emotionally. Obviously because of right now, and it's a happy flavor, but it acknowledges that. So the idea is like the sun always shines again. There's always sun behind the clouds, and that has been really fun to do. One time I did a flavor that was inspired by Igor Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, which was 100 years old then. And it was really cool because that musical piece in ballet was like, it really challenged the sort of upper class and the aristocracy and like the bohemians who were there on opening night, like sitting in the cheap seats, like loved it. But like the rich people hated it, and they like all like rioted and were throwing things at each other or whatever. And so the flavor that I made was absinthe and meringues. And the meringues are like very tricky. You have to have like the right humidity. And we like piped thousands of them just like by hand, little kisses of meringues, and then put them into an absinthe ice cream. And what was really cool is that I felt like the meringues were like the old school. They were like the rule-based sort of aristocracy, that like hierarchy and all of that, just representing that. And then the absinthe was like the poet, the sort of free thinker. But like in the ice cream, the meringues over like 3 days disappeared, which I just thought was really cool. And anyway, that ice cream was awesome, but it ended up being kind of a metaphor.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
So Andrew, what ballets have inspired your beers?
Yeah, I feel like most of the inspiration that I get for stuff is usually it's less poetic than what Jenny just said. It's usually more flavor driven, but not always. You get inspiration from anywhere and everywhere. Be it, easy one to say is like our Christmas beers are all inspired by the verses of the 12 days of Christmas song. That's easy. Or like thinking of, the process of adding beer or making a beer that's based around like literally this landscape that you've seen around you, like when I was on my honeymoon, and making a beer from that. But yeah, no, most of the beers that, we make a lot of beers per year. We made 160 something in bottles and cans last year. So a lot of the flavors are sort of inspired by things that we eat, things that we drink that are not beer. And those sort of flavor combinations that we know work, and kind of trying to mimic the best parts of those in a liquid form that it's beer. So
Jenny, I don't know if you would
artistry. I still think it's artistry, but there are only a couple beers that I've made that are inspired by poems or books or novels or verses. I think there might be one or two that are inspired by songs, but Yeah, the names of the beers might be inspired by poems, but the actual liquid usually not.
Before we had a good question before it gets too lost. Someone had asked what stores specifically in Northern California is Jeni's available at. So I saw someone in the comments that said Whole Foods, easy to find.
Whole Foods, Gelson's, if there's are there Gelson's in Northern California. And you can go on our website and find stores as well. But I'm trying to think of what other stores are in Northern California. But anyway, I think the best thing is to go to our store. I think it's like,
Go to the website.
there's like a pint finder there. But yeah, all the Whole Foods. And then of course our website will ship it to you. And that way you have a sort of more variety of flavors.
Do you ship everywhere, nationwide?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
they send this really fancy box that has like a dry ice insert. It looks very, very professional.
Yeah, and we
Wow.
we do all of
It
our
is professional.
artwork in house. I mean, I left art school to go make ice cream, so of course we want to, I think it's really more for us about communication though, and like getting you into the spirit of ice cream, kind of bringing you into our world, and so that's really a part of the fun for us is like the unboxing experience. I mean, and telling that story before you even get to ice cream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you typically put the beer in the ice cream? Do you like ever do floats, or do you just keep them separate?
Sometimes, especially if it's something that's really like a darker beer, or actually, like something like a sorbet would be awesome in like what I'm drinking now. Would be really light and refreshing and beautiful, and like a lighter beer or a very So, and we've done like black currant, which is a cocktail, right? It's like snake bite or something like that.
Yeah.
So we've done like black currant sorbet with beer, with like a light beer, which is really great too. But yeah, you can do lots of different. You think you can definitely put ice cream and beer and together in a glass.
Yeah. You probably need to worry about the acidity of the beer sometimes if you're doing more of a dairy thing versus a fruit ice cream, but
And maybe only drink one.
yeah,
I don't know.
I think we
Would
might
you
have
have any,
skipped it, but weren't you going to make some float suggestions, Belle? Was that something you were going to talk about a little bit?
yeah, I mean, as far as the beers that were included, I don't know, these are just off the top of my head. As far as the beers that we shipped out as part of the pack and Jeni's ice cream,
I've got mine like right here, by the way, you guys.
Oh, there you go.
I've got like
Loaded
ice
up.
And yeah.
Good girl.
I think
Yeah.
with Hold the Spoon, despite it being inspired by the Blackout chocolate cake, I'm kind of thinking that the salted caramel ice cream you guys make.
Yeah, because like think of it like a cake that you're gonna put ice cream with. Right?
Exactly.
So the beer is the cake. So yeah, you could definitely,
Yeah.
my uncle when I was growing up, he was like great uncle, the one that served in the war, and he didn't really talk at all, but he used to salt his chocolate cake.
Mhm.
That was like just something he was known for. And so he would, you'd have chocolate cakes, it was birthday or whatever, and then he would just take the table salt and salt it. So salty caramel would be sort of like along that line with this
Exactly.
flavor. I'm gonna have some too.
Chocolate, salt, caramel, they all work well. As far as another one from the pack, this bakery boysenberry pie, which we should definitely try at some point.
Oh, that's what that one is. Okay, couldn't remember.
Yeah. So despite it being
Oh, yeah.
boysenberries and slightly different fruit, I think this would go really, really well with your brambleberry crisp ice cream.
They're very similar. We used to pick boysenberries out in we had 10 acres of forest land.
Mhm.
And so definitely, I think you could pair those easily.
I'm gonna open this one as well.
Oh my word!
You ripping it up right now?
Getting a flight going.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I
Oh
thought
my God.
I actually thought I should go with the boysenberry first, and
Yeah, I
then
should do that too.
the chocolate.
Whoa. Beautiful.
Yeah, this is
Beautiful.
this is a fun one.
Wow, the color is incredible.
Mhm.
Want to see a fun one? I think that glass, that's a fun one,
That is a fun glass.
right? That's a fun one.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
just
Oh
like,
my
think-
goodness.
I think the next thing we wanted to kind of touch on was how does your innovation pipeline work? Both for Andrew and for Jeni. Like what steps do you take kind of when you're driving towards a new product?
Woo! Well, first of all, let me talk about this beer.
Yeah,
This flavor.
Let's
Like,
shout out the beer a little bit too.
wow, because I just like filled my head with it. I don't know. I mean, I feel like when I taste ice cream, which is that it's all about breathing and about getting your breath, right? Because you sort of, it sort of spreads out, and then it scents the air that's in your face, like behind your nose and in front of your nose and like in your mouth and throat. And then that sort of, I don't know, like creates this sort of blooms as it sort of dissipates, you know? And
Yeah.
it's there that you can like work through the nuances of what's happening, which is really cool. And you can do this with ice cream and wine and beer and all of that stuff. But I just think it's so much fun to do that. But it's
Definitely.
so good. So I feel like I can't concentrate when I've got the notes of all these things. So it's like music in my head.
Yeah, definitely aerating when you're drinking, if you're trying to specifically taste individual flavors, is huge in beer and obviously wine. I didn't really know as much about ice cream doing that. Also getting like retronasal after swallowing beer versus just spitting it if you're tasting wine is huge.
Yeah, and I'm always like, don't go on a date and do this. It's not very cute, but because it's like retronasally, but then also whatever it's called in the front, like when you can, you know, it's like really like a cloud. It ends up being almost like a cloud around your head, and it's like anyway. But yeah, with ice cream, it's really great. In fact, ice cream is such a perfect platform for scent because butterfat melts 2 degrees below body temperature. And so you can load it up with scent, freeze it, you know, in the cream. And then as soon as it hits your tongue, it explodes with flavor, blooms. It sort of releases all of that flavor. And so you can just like load up with whatever, you know, it is, whether it's chocolate or mint or passion fruit and tangerine. And then you keep going with it and you end up with whatever else is in there, buttermilk or fresh yogurt or cream or even like different kinds of cream, like grass pastured milk or whatever. So, yeah.
Do you feel that like fat soluble flavors tend to like burst more on ice cream in your, like when it actually touches your tongue and that fat melts?
Yeah, it's really cool. So like coffee, for instance, is a good way to explain that. Coffee is a fat soluble scent. And so when you open a bag of coffee, it smells like that. And like you've heard a lot of people say, oh, I don't like coffee, but I love the way it smells. So in ice cream, we can steep coffee right in the cream and it will adhere to the butterfat. And so when it sort of volatilizes on your palate, it smells or tastes like coffee smells, not like coffee tastes. So when you steep coffee in water, you get those oils sort of floating on the surface. So you get a little bit of that, but mostly you're tasting that sort of plant, the bean or whatever in the coffee. So you get that. It's just a different expression of it. So same with teas and many other fat soluble flavors.
That's very interesting because we usually have to rely on either water or ethanol soluble compounds. Fat in beer is usually a pretty bad thing. So we don't really have those solubilities. We have ethanol solubility, and water, obviously, but that's interesting.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I originally, before I got into ice cream, I wanted to study perfuming. I'm not actually, I don't like super, I mean, I'm just really connected to my sense of smell. And I was actually thinking about pursuing that, which is one of the ways I got into ice cream, actually. I had been studying sort of ancient perfuming, but I used to drive to Kentucky to get high proof alcohol because you couldn't get it here to build perfumes in. So yeah, so, you know, kind of similar.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We were.
Hold on. Can we? I was going to say, can we stop and talk about ancient perfuming, please, before we like?
Oh, yeah.
I have other questions that I want to get out, but like this is like stop the fucking presses. What is ancient perfuming?
Well, I mean, so since people have been sort of trying to make themselves smell good for like a really, really, really long time, and forever, and pretty, I mean. Even like you can go back anywhere, but ancient perfumers would use fat instead of, alcohol that we know now, and submerge scent in fat. But those fats would be fats that would melt on your skin, and fats melt at lots of different temperatures, but that were solid at room temperature or whatever ambient temperature was, wherever they were. And so all sorts of obviously flowers were really important in perfuming for forever and ever. And in fact, I think we should be exploring those in cooking and of course ice cream too. And so I do a lot. I love to use not just rose, but like different kinds of rose, or lang lang is one of my favorite flowers, or orange blossom is one of my favorite scents just on the planet. And they're popular in different cuisine, but not necessarily in America or yet. But yeah, so I mean, all the way up until the 20th century, even really it was Coco Chanel. Funny too, because she was at the Igor Stravinsky Rite of Spring concert or whatever, the show. But she was the one I think that first introduced that synthetic with Chanel No. 5, which is a perfect perfume and beautiful. But it's supposed to be 5 cents, and I think those are actually synthetic. Perfuming is.
I
really
love
cool
the idea of someone that's
online.
like not familiar with the brewery or familiar with Jeni's that like happened to tune in, and they're just like watching this and they're like they have no idea what's going on. This is cool though. Like honestly, this conversation took an awesome
why are we
turn.
talking this?
Yeah, I'm loving every second.
LA's.
If it's getting too annoying in the comments, just let us know. Connor, are you paying attention, dude?
Sometimes I feel like I'm not an
influence.
ice cream maker. I'm an explorer.
Yeah.
I love that.
We're all after our own unique, sense of smell, flavors, things that make us happy at the end of the day. So
Well, and your sense of smell, really, so much food is about that. So much of flavor is that. I mean, you can only taste 5 things on your tongue. Everything else is in your nose. And so we really have. There's just so much that we can do and explore and blend and all of that on that front. It's a really great way to sort of be in the moment too. I mean, I think the same is true with beer as ice cream, where it's like it can sort of pull you into the moment when you start to become aware of what's going on, which is really great. There are a few things that I think that do that right now, and that's also a lovely aspect of it.
definitely.
Last question for you, Jeni, and then we'll bump over to Andrew. So when you're like in your when you're in the zone, in your innovation zone, what kind of music would you put on? If any?
It just depends. I think that when I'm in my thinking zone, I'm in my car. I drive every day. I love car. I'm sort of a car nerd, and like I just have a GTI, and it's just really fast. Got some mods on it, and I like to get out there and like think in my car. And so it's anything. I mean, right now I'm really into this musician. He calls himself Active Child, and it's just incredible. He has this and that's another one where you can go deep in the nuances of the music, and so you have to be alone and you have to really listen. You don't have to, but like and but I mean, I'll listen to like Metallica, like it depends. I love the Drive soundtrack actually from the movie. A lot of times
the Drive soundtrack. So Kavinsky, it's like a lot of Kavinsky, right?
Yes, it's so good.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I'm still like, I listened to that when it came out, and I still it's one of my sort of go-tos, I think, sometimes thinking music. I like to get pumped up when I'm like in that mode of like, because you sort of have to like get behind your idea, and believe in it. And so, yeah.
If you had to pick one of these Active Child albums, which You Are All I See, Mercy, or In Another Life, if you had to pick one to recommend.
In Another Life. And actually his song Brighter Day, this just came out last month. His song Brighter Day is so for now. It's really
that's awesome.
Perfect for now. And it's not like super happy, but it's also not, I mean, it's so hopeful, so it's just one of those things you can like listen to and you just, okay.
That's cool. We'll give it a shot. Andrew, what about you? Nice little segue. We'll just slide over to you.
For music or about?
Yeah, it's metal, I'm sure, but
it's usually metal or blues, but usually metal. Like if I'm just like grinding away on my computer, like focusing on stuff, like it's metal. It's something I can kind of groove to.
But like what?
I mean, today I was listening to a lot of Cold Orange and Knocked Loose. So that's like
I'm writing this down because I like metal too.
Post-hardcore, I guess. Like
Knocked Loose is pretty cool.
Yeah. Those two are really similar bands. But yeah, that's what I was listening.
Connor's up there. Connor wants us to ask him about Yacht Rock. We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
That was a temporary channel. It was only on for the summer.
Yeah, and Left Behind today. That's also on the playlist.
Left Behind.
Yeah, but also like if I'm listening to like less hard metal, listening more to like Clutch and bands like that. So Clutch, Pantera, Metallica. If I'm
Yeah.
listening a little bit lighter.
The thing about metal is that it's very personal, and you get into a cloud, and like I like really like that.
Yeah.
And it's because sometimes I feel like I don't know, I just feel like I'm like going into battle or something like that too, and like I have to focus and I have to get an answer now. And sometimes that like music gets me there. It really it's funny too, because people don't talk about that much anymore. It's like not popular anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but it definitely puts you in a mindset, and for me, it puts me in a mindset where I can really like, grind out some.
Focus.
Yeah, exactly.
It's weird. It's not
which if I played it without earphones, my wife would be in the other room like, how can you even concentrate on anything with that?
Yeah. Totally. No, it's really funny. I mean, I'll I pull up to my office or whatever and like not realizing that I've got it on so loud. Because even when you turn it down after you've had it on really loud, it's still really loud.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Connor, that one's for you, dude. Take it, Connor.
Why is Keith always messing with me, man? I don't know, dude. It's been so long since I listened to rap. I listened to rap when I was a kid, so maybe Eminem. I don't know.
Which one?
Nice.
I don't know. They were all good, man. What's the Marshall Mathers?
Jiggy Slim Shady. All right, good. You to pass. Andrew, let's hear about the innovation pipeline for you.
Okay, so getting back to like beer and how we do stuff.
Yeah, like concept to release. Like what's the process? How do you come up with the beer, and what steps do you take to release it?
So at a very, very high level thing, let me start by saying like inspiration for a beer or a flavor can come from anywhere, be it our customers, especially our society members who are, pretty loyal and vocal to us, as well as like any employee in the company. If we're talking about more structured innovation about, where we need to make X number of beers, most of that starts with the innovation team, which we have at the brewery. Obviously COVID has kind of changed a little bit about the frequency, but we usually in normal life, we meet weekly, and we're starting to get back to that. And every week we have a specific agenda on what we're meeting about. So the highest level one, and where like an idea starts, is like our specific week where we're talking about like just general high level brainstorming about like concepts, flavors, what we can do differently, and just like come up with the craziest ideas you can think of, and the just general basics of how to make it work. And this isn't necessarily in order of weeks of the month, but the sort of next meeting from that is like a sort of planning, scheduling, how do we translate that concept into something that we can make, like a liquid, at the very, very basic level. And then kind of from there, it goes into our pilot plant, which I manage. We have a little 3-barrel, which is a 93-gallon system. So it's basically a tenth of the size of our production system. And then we have 14 single brew length fermenters for that. So we can be doing 14 different projects at once, which allows us to iterate really quickly for beer, considering we have to ferment. And from there, once the beer gets close to finished, we're done with our tweaks. We'll come back for another meeting, and we'll taste all these beers with this group. And we'll kind of say like, hey, here's what we like, here's what we don't like. And we'll decide on how that specific pilot liquid, after tasting it, how that's going to be treated, whether we're going to send it to barrels, whether it was a successful trial and we're ready to scale it, whether we're going to dump it, which thankfully doesn't happen very often, or if it's going to go to the tasting rooms, or if we're just going to hold it back and blend it to the main batch. If the beer does go to the tasting rooms, we figure out what's the plan for getting that release, how people are going to taste it, how we're going to describe it from a marketing perspective. And then we send it to the tasting rooms. And then sort of the fourth meeting of that is a retroactive meeting where we look how those beers that were sent to the tasting room, how they do from various metrics that we have for what we consider successful. And that varies widely based off beer style. And then another sort of thing that this group does that we haven't done in a little while is we have like an inspiration tasting meeting, which Ryan and Connor, you've definitely been a part of in the past, where we either get other beers, we get other food, we get some sort of thing that inspires us, and we get together as a group, We open, drink, consume whatever it is, that's that thing, and then we kind of talk about it. Anyways, once we've found a successful concept, then we move it on to a new product development group where it gets the business plan made for it, how we're going to release it, when we're going to release it, format, pricing, blah, blah, blah. And then
A
it gets
name.
name.
That's always easy.
And then we move it over to production side and it gets made. But as far as like, that's the innovation process pipeline. There's also a whole other host of things that go through the pilot plan, be it new raw materials or new techniques or just a random ingredient we want to play with. And that can also go back to the top, go back to the brainstorm meeting. Here's the beer we want to do. So that it's a very complicated process, but I mean, we made essentially 300 different beers between the pilot and the production system last year. So
yeah,
wow,
a lot.
What is that timeline? How all of those things you just described, but like how long?
That can be as quick as a couple weeks to like well over a year.
Yeah, if it's a barrel aged beer, it can be
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it very much depends on the product, how many times it takes to iterate on that, which can be anywhere from 1 to 10. And yeah, it really varies hugely, but it can be very, very quick or it can be very, very prolonged. So,
Andrew, how often do you have on pilot beers where you make a pilot and that's the end of the project, or do you kind of always tweak the recipes until we come up with something that works?
I mean, it depends on if that beer that was brewed on the pilot system was destined to be a beer that we knew we wanted to release, or if it was an ingredient trial or just for fun project. Like some beers that have been made, part of what we brew on the pilot system sometimes are just beers to keep people entertained in the tasting room, what we call pub beers. Some of those have turned into beers that we ended up being like, oh, this actually caught fire. And we identified that in the sort of roundup meeting where we evaluated those. And then that slowly made its way in. But there have been other ideas where it's like, well, that didn't work. And that flavor concept is way too weird. And let's just table that idea. Or it's this ingredient didn't work. We did a beer with an odd dairy ingredient that's not typically used in brewing recently, and it was a nightmare of a brew day that I had to endure. So,
while on the subject of like weird ingredients, do either of you feel like this is a bad time to try new stuff? Do you feel like people are maybe not as accepting of trying new stuff, that now it's just easier to get like the IPAs that they love and save kind of the more experimental stuff? Yeah, for like Andrew said, pub time or yeah, I don't know what the ice cream.
I can be very quick on my answer to that, which is we're going to pass this phase at some point, and that's what I'm looking forward to, because I'm planning beers for 3 months from now, 6 months, 2 years from now. We're working on process beers for years from now, so this is going to pass at some point. So I'd say no, it's not too risky to, at least on our innovation, like small pilot scale, to be trying new things. I don't think it's ever a bad time to be doing that from our perspective and the sort of pilot plan. But Jeni might have a slightly different view, or similar.
Well, slightly, but from a slightly different, it's slightly different. So I think that people are craving something that they know. I think this actually started a long time ago. I think we've been in topsy-turvy sort of era, and it started not a long time ago, but within the last couple of years. And so it's, just, we're not going to sell like an herbal ice cream, or, people want, we did let's say a rose petal jelly donut, but like they want that sort of, the jelly donut aspect allows us to make rose petal, but we would not be able to sell rose right now by itself. And so I think, even with everything you guys do, is sort of has that sort of familiar and sort of forward element to it, and so that's what people want. It's like chocolate cake beer, right? That sounds like kind of perfect, or boysenberry pie or whatever. But so it's almost like I almost feel like it's because of those crossover cultures we're finding, where we want sort of the things that that help us feel connected to people and to each other and to community a little bit, and just stuff that we know a little bit. But
but it's all about the balance.
Yeah, there are flavors that I made in the past that like no one would ever buy celery rum raisin ice cream. It's one of my favorite ice creams. Nobody would buy celery ice cream right now. They
Never
don't
know.
need it. Like everybody wants the chocolate with more chocolate and whatever. I totally understand because I kind of feel the same way. Like I don't want like your crazy idea with fennel pollen and whatever, as beautiful as that is.
Right.
Like you know what I mean? But do something that I kind of know. Just do it really well.
That's funny. I was literally about to say like a concept with fennel. Like we definitely do have like these. I don't want to call it highbrow ideas, but they're either polarizing or like delicate flavors that maybe us as like producers really like, or like these intricate flavors that are not really mainstream. And we do, because we make so many beers, we do occasionally do. I wouldn't call that intricate. But we do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But the popular ones are flavors that are familiar to people, and we've definitely seen that.
Where's Patrick's artichoke beer? You still working on that?
Whoa, that actually sounds awesome.
But yeah, no, we made a beer recently with fennel that I think.
No, and I love fennel, but you're right about that. Like it's like a small group. Everybody's like, if anybody ever like was like, where's the fennel, ice cream or whatever? It's like you and me, we're the only ones that like that because, it's just not a flavor that Americans really like. Whereas in other parts of the world, people grew up with it. They have toothpaste and just the stuff of their life that smells like fennel or has fennel around, or that sort of that scent is familiar, anise or whatever, but not here. And so it's very polarizing. But that's one of those flavors that like that almost never does well anyway, even though.
Yeah, it's weird. Like there's so much wild fennel growing, and especially in Southern California, that if you grew up here and went hiking, especially in the coastal areas, like the smell in the spring and summer is like anise and fennel. Like there's.
But so you could probably do a beer that's like California hike,
We have so many people. Yeah, that's true. We have so many people.
11 had the anise in it.
Yeah, there's so many people who are not originally from here that it still might be. Maybe we could sell in like Texas or somewhere where people move to once they've left California.
Yeah, exactly. No, fennel is awesome. It's one of my favorites. We actually take there's those little fennel seed, candy coated fennel seeds. Mm-hmm. And so those are really fun. So you can make sort of just like a star anise ice cream, which is just so soft and beautiful. And then put those in, and they sort of bloom. They like melt around there, so you get these little pockets of color. It's beautiful.
That's something we should talk about later because I'm very jealous.
Anise and fennel?
No, texture.
I saw an interesting question up there. There was an interesting question earlier about
we should get to Dave's question.
Yeah.
The pilot, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
kind of
Andrew
similar to how we have
system.
our pilot program.
What does yours look like, Jenny? Like, how do you pilot? How do you preview ice cream, like small batch tester?
Well, we have a really small test kitchen, and we just do half gallon at a time, very, very small. And we can do everything on our bench that we can do in large format. I mean, we pasteurize in there, and we just build everything from scratch in there. And we're in there just all the time. In fact, I moved it to my home. So and then Hunter, our the other test kitchen chef or whatever, she's got another ice cream machine in her home right now. And so we're making ice creams this way now, but we're working on 2021 flavors at this moment. We can make flavors in, I would say, as short as 4 months. That's about as short as we can do it. And that's if every ingredient falls into place. But we're like you guys in that some of the ingredients, we don't do barrel aging or whatever, but we might have to grow the strawberries or grow the whatever, or source the wine, and finding the right partners who have our standards and can supply us with what we need and how. That's always sort of part of that challenge as well. So once we get the flavor done, then it goes into like, how can we make this at scale? We can do small batches we have another kitchen that we can do small batches in, but it's only a couple of times a year, because that kitchen also does like all of our marshmallows and chocolate sauce and other things too. So they can like do, they're kind of, limited. But mostly we make all of our ice creams right at the dairy. And so it comes in from the farms, they get separated, milk and cream, and then turned into ice cream right there.
Can you get the same sort of air incorporation when churning ice cream at home that you can on your production runs?
Not really, but we're almost at the lowest anyway.
Okay.
So the one that I have at home is an Italian machine, and it's Italian machines incorporate very low air because they're very low fat, and so that's part of it. It has to be that way. In America, we want a little bit more air. Otherwise, it starts to feel like a brick. It starts to feel heavy, almost soggy, like a sponge that's just like soggy. But not much. And so in our ice creams, we're almost at the lowest you go anyway. And so it ends up working fine here. They're a little bit different, but.
And chilling, like for ice crystal structure, or are you guys just?
Yeah, it's not perfect. I mean, it's definitely, we know if it does well here, it's going to do better in at the dairy because the machines are perfect. They're new. They're just awesome. And that machine, we just tell it what we want it to do exactly with viscosity and everything. So every detail can be tweaked over there, but yeah, we don't have that here, but it's pretty, I'm pretty good at it over here.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but
I figured, but yeah, I guess you would know what texture. I mean, you can dial in the texture later on. You're looking more for flavor, probably more than texture for the most part. Cause
and
you have
because I've done this 25 years, I just know how it will perform. Different things will perform in different ways. And then also because we have a bank of so many recipes that we've done over the years, the way that a lot of times we'll do recipe development is, hey, take salty caramel, divide it, half strength, add cocoa nibs, add this or whatever, and then that's an ice cream. So it almost is like conceptual, like we can say, just do it like that. That'll be first. And then we can tweak from there. So we know what works and we can almost start with those recipes. Or even if it's something like Brambleberry Crisp, we can say, let's make something like Brambleberry, but let's do a rose raspberry sauce and then put donuts in it instead. You know what I mean? So so a lot of times we can develop it already knowing it's going to work. It's just a matter of the flavor.
Interesting.
Yeah, Miss Jenny, you got called out in the comments. Jonathan is wondering when you are going to make a brewery themed ice cream.
I know. Well, we need to definitely. We could do like the double down where we take your black chocolate cake one and then make it into an ice cream.
Yeah, hell yeah, I like that.
An ice cream inspired by the beer, inspired by the ice cream.
Yeah. It would just be like
Inception.
Yes, but no, that I think would be really fun, and I actually think it'd be really fun to do one of the lighter, because I'm just like such a sour beer fan anyway, but one of the most popular flavors that we did early on in the early 2000s was cherry lambic, and everybody would love to have something like that back. And so this apricot is I mean, I just love it. Actually, you know what, I'm going to open this other one.
We should send you some sour beers for sure. We
the boys
quite a few of those, but none of them made this specific shipment.
So this would be a really fun one. I'm gonna open it now.
So what's interesting is the beer that we the ice cream that we
almost. What a gorgeous color.
Yeah. The ice cream we almost picked for scaling this year was one of your ice creams that was on the acidic side. I'm blanking on what it was, but I think it was like one that involved blueberry and lemon.
Oh yeah. So that's buttermilk and fresh buttermilk made for us, and fresh yogurt made for us. A lot of ice cream makers and yogurt makers use like a powdered yogurt or buttermilk. And so I have to call that out because it's something that we go to the ends of the earth to get this fifth generation dairy to make buttermilk for us. But buttermilk is tart. So it's almost like kefir or something once you put it together with a little bit of cream and milk. And then that's a great platform for fruit flavors. Because it's almost like the way I make something like sherbet, even though we're not allowed to call it sherbet because that has a federal standard. But it's just kind of our thing. But I love those flavors very much. Yeah,
that ice cream was so bright, and we're like, we could make a Jeni's collab that's from our sour brand. Like this would be that, or we could adjust acidity on the clean side as well. But that flavor was also, that ice cream flavor was very electric, and that nearly made it to one of the ones that we were trialing.
Well, wait until you see. We have one coming out this summer that it's a collab with someone I love dearly, and I can't say right now, but it's amazing. But you're gonna love it. It literally is electric. I mean, I feel like I just call it electric. It's like blue. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be a really fun one too.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's something we should work on. We should start thinking about boysenberry, like a sour beer sorbet. I think people would go
We do
nuts
make
for
a
it.
boysenberry. We do make a boysenberry sour beer. So
I'm drinking it.
Oh.
Should
Yes, I
we
love it.
chew on this? This is a good time to start
On
chewing.
this.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm going to start chewing,
Yeah, Jenny, did this make it to you by any chance? The
Wait, which
little
one is it?
bottle. It's
chew on this.
a bottle from us. That's this.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, that's a
But
bummer.
I'm like, you guys, this is the first alcohol I've had since November.
Oh,
yeah.
so
It's
hopefully,
not on purpose, it's just whatever.
hopefully a bottle of it makes it to you at some point, because this is a good thing to talk about for our innovations. So
Tell
one of
us
the-
what it is. I'm gonna turn on a light because it doesn't look like it, but it's so dark in here right now. Hang on.
fair enough.
But yeah, tell me, what is that?
So this beer is for our Hoarders Society, which is like our most exclusive club level. That's invitation only. And this beer was from a small batch box that was made for them, and it's a beer that we call Chew on This. And to take a step back, obviously one of your amazing flavors that we've liked for so long and that we've tried to work on is Brambleberry Crisp. And we haven't pulled the trigger on it for something that we wanted to do in distro packaging, just because we felt in order to justify the flavors and to get the flavor strength that we wanted, we couldn't hit any sort of price point that we
Right.
could send into distro.
I've had that problem many times.
So on these Hoarders box beers, sometimes we will not look to even break even. They're specifically to try and make something unique. And through a lot of different other projects we've worked on, found ingredients that we liked that we could use to make a Brambleberry Crisp inspired ice cream inspired beer. And so that ended up being this, which is barrel aged as well. It has boysenberries in it. It has a lot of vanilla. It has a lot of lactose, milk sugar. It has granola in it as well. I think I said the fruit, boysenberry and blackberry. And if a bottle didn't get to you, we need to send you one, because this is fire.
You know what? My husband put all the beer away and it was like in the downstairs fridge. I'm going to go see if there was one.
Yeah.
And then I missed it.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. I'm going to do that.
Sounds good.
Just to see.
So now there's two of us. Connor, what do you want to talk about? Do you have this beer?
Oh, hey, what's up, guys?
Oh, what's up, Daniel? Do you have this beer? I left one in your office the other day.
No, I don't have it.
He's only drinking Joyride.
I'm drinking Joyride. I haven't been in the office in a minute. I'm gonna jump back off as soon as Jenny's back, but
Oh, that's a classic one. I just wasn't paying attention. Just spilled a little bit on the table right here. But it's
Jenny
just
says hi.
one of those beers. You just don't want to spill it, It's better in the glass, better in the bottle, better in your stomach, but it's just not. This beer's got no place on the table. The liquid, at least.
The liquid.
The liquid, at least.
I think all
man,
beers
so-
do have a place on the table, but
this table is. I'm gonna probably have to throw it away now. Connor, if you with all this ice cream talk, Connor, if you had to pick an ice cream to describe 2020, what would you pick?
I don't know, man. It's Rocky Road, I guess. I don't know.
Damn, I was gonna say like a peach patchouli sherbet.
Oh, this
Just
sounds
gross.
terrible.
Yeah, it does. So does 2020.
Oh man,
it's whatever you can eat alone.
Yeah,
Daniel.
Yeah,
Since you're here, did you want to talk about your part of the innovation pipeline? You want to add anything to that?
no, I think Andrew nailed it, man. It's a fun team to be a part of, and we get to be really creative. And it's not just, it's all around, right? Like you get to develop recipes, concept. Oh,
She got it.
Nice.
Chew on this.
Chew on this one.
Yay!
perfect. All right, well, five
Very cool.
Ooh,
is definitely a crowd.
Amazing.
So.
whoops. Hopefully that's the right beer too.
Oh wow, this is.
Uh oh.
I was like running
Uh-oh.
upstairs is what I was doing.
While we're on cleanup duty, we haven't really talked too much about like the actual recipe development for this beer itself.
Yeah.
Talk about that one. I mean, it's like just the beer compared like from this one to the last one. I mean, do you feel like this beer really needed to be a stout?
For which? The chocolate one?
For Hold the Spoon.
Oh, Hold the Spoon. Yeah. I mean, last time around with the peanut butter chocolate, salted peanut butter chocolate fleck beer, we thought it would be cool to do a non-stout base. With the blackout chocolate cake inspired beer with that ice cream, the ice cream was just so layered with chocolate notes, including bitterness, and a stout for me felt right. It would have been also hard to get it in a blonde beer. That said, the base for this chew on this is our wheat wine base. So this was a blonde beer before we added a ton of fruit to it. So, and hopefully, Jenny, hopefully we sent you the correct beer because there's a bunch of these that look the same here. What does it say on the side though? On the sticker,
It's kind of purple. So let's see. I don't know. Chew on this.
Okay, cool. So that should be
that's
right.
right there. So that's the Brambleberry crisp inspired one, right?
Yeah,
Fun. All right.
that's weird. Mine's almost not carbonated. So
Mine definitely
don't-
carbonated.
That beer's a little older. I don't remember. Was that last year in one of last year's boxes?
I think it was Q4 of last year.
Oh, okay.
Oh wow. Wow, it's almost like wine.
Yeah,
Like it has a little.
There's a
Oh my goodness.
there's a good amount of fruit in it as well. So
Uh-huh.
so there's a lot of blackberry and boysenberry in it, and then there's a lot of milk sugar, sugar for texture, and then vanilla and
Wait, how does milk sugar work? How does that provide texture? Or,
So the
within the
main-
beer.
So the main
Lactose,
reason is that the actual sugar molecules in it are not digestible by standard brewing yeast strains, so they can't metabolize certain sugars, so it leaves.
So they're like lactose intolerant.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, they can't break down those more complex sugars into more basic sugars that they can consume. They don't have the enzymatic process for the most part. Various strains of wild yeast do, but standard brewing yeast does not, and so it leaves residual sugar as well as body. So texturally, it enhances texture by leaving higher body. And there are a couple other weird sugars that can do that, as well as just how you design your mash bill. The temperature that you mash in changes the sugar composition to more complex sugars and dextrins that cannot be consumed by the yeast. So those are ways that we have to adjust like residual sugar levels in body. But lactose can do it for beers that we want to be more vegan friendly. Maltodextrin is also not consumable by yeast, residual sugar in body, despite being used.
Wait, when you want it to be more vegan friendly? Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, when we want to
lactose,
use
it's from
milk sugar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Which
I'm
is-
glad I asked.
Which is weird because maltodextrin in food use is used for a lot of other things that are not sugar related. It's texture or a bunch of other things like what they do in molecular gastronomy with maltodextrin and olive oil, for example, turning olive oil into a solid. But yeah,
I feel like this beer, the chew on this, like really is kind of like a liquid Jeni's beer because it has that crazy texture. It's like such a unique trait about a lot of the Jeni's products. So yeah, I feel like you really nailed the texture on just this beer. This is a big beer.
yeah.
That's
Jeni,
so interesting. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, is yours warm on the warmer
It is
side?
warm. Yeah.
That's the carbonation
Yeah.
issue, and also probably changes some of the flavor. But yeah, the CO2 is not dissolved at higher temperatures. So
Oh, that's
if
so
there's
interesting.
any,
that's what it was.
so there's a lot of puree in it. So if there's any sort of particle, which I can see a little bit of like fruit sugars in it, any sort of particle in the bottom of the glass is going to cause a nucleation point, which is going to cause that CO2 that already doesn't want to be in suspension at a warmer temperature to gush. So sorry about the
So
mess.
cool. Oh no, it's totally fine.
But yeah,
Great.
that's our weird.
And then I'll put it in the fridge and like get and experience it that way too. But I mean, it's fun to experience things at different temperatures as well and see how that impacts.
Definitely.
But also
hopefully less
texturally,
explosive results though.
I think you know, in ice cream too, it's sort of you know, a lot of people sort of, you know, ice cream makers or whatever, you just sort of buy an ice cream base, put some flavorings in it or whatever, freeze it in your machine, and then call it a day, and it's like ice cream and it's fun and all of that. But actually, I think that the most fun aspect of ice cream is in building body and texture, because that's how those flavors get released. How, you know, we can control kind of how it melts. We can actually put a lot of work into like how those flavors sort of pop up, you know, as you're eating them, and we'll never be perfect at it, you know, because it's so complicated and so challenging, because everybody's eating ice cream at different temperatures and we're scooping ice cream at different places and whatever. But it's so much part of the challenge for me that keeps me in the game, you know. More than flavor. Flavor is the fun part, and you know, but then it's like bringing textures to life with those ingredients, you know, is what's so exciting, I think. Still,
how do you go about selecting your ingredients? What's kind of the most important piece to you?
If I can take a step in first, for sure, one of the most frustrating things about tasting all your delicious ice creams and then trying to figure out how to make them into beer is that a lot of your ice creams are very texturally driven and involve I don't know if they're called add-ins or mix-ins or whatever you call them, but it's something, as you can see, if we have any sort of particulate in beer, we can't put that into a package very easily, otherwise it will explode on you. So that's what's frustrating. It's like, oh man, these ice creams are amazing. They have all these like nice chewy things or textural things that pop, and we could do that in the pub, where we could make things that are outside of just viscosity and sweetness, where we could do like a spherification type thing or introduce things into the consumer's glass that's stable there. But if we're talking about distro product, we can't have textural elements in beer easily outside of possibly changing the gas source between CO2 and
well,
nature.
and actually my favorite ice creams are the ones that are just plain ice cream, you know, that don't have a sauce or a nut or any piece in it. I like eating ice cream on a cone or from a cone, because I feel like when you like lick the ice cream, you sort of sweep off the perfect amount of ice cream, it blooms, and then you go back for more, and it's like you kind of go on this journey from like super frozen all the way down to almost liquid and warmer, and I just think that you get all those nuances when you lick the ice cream, but you can't. It's really hard to lick an ice cream cone that has like chunks in it. So my preference has always actually been for our smoother ice creams. I mean, I do have some favorites that have chunks in it as well, but anyway, so yeah, even with just like the super smooth ice creams, thinking about how, like, just that creaminess and which I think reminds me of like the work that you're doing with this one is like, what is the texture that as you drink it, you're sort of, how are you experiencing that, and how does it release flavor, and how does it sort of stay with you or whatever, which I just think is like so interesting. And also the thing that you don't think of when you're just going about your day and you don't think about how people make beer or people make ice cream, you know, and like how much goes into just how it melts, or that I never think about the texture of beer and how like lactic acid or lactic sugars or whatever can like lactose can change the texture of beer. Yeah,
it's really interesting, like how you can be like an expert of one industry and then kind of have a vague idea how something might work in another industry, but it's like, oh, duh, that makes sense. I had never thought of that before.
Yeah,
like that's definitely like I don't know any. I mean, I make ice cream at home, but I'm not a professional.
So hard to do.
So,
quick question:
yeah,
cone or spoon?
Oh, for me,
what's the proper way? Cone.
Yes, cone.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, just a lick. Yeah.
I don't keep cones around all that often. I do enjoy eating out of a cone as long as it doesn't get everywhere. But I have to say that the majority of the ice cream when I do consume it is with a spoon. But I guess I should hold the spoon, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could just lick it out of the pint.
I have done that.
Know what you do, Connor?
Home from work.
Yeah, you know it.
Yeah, you can like
Connor.
fold the top and like I use it as a spoon. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Coner, dude. Coner. Coner. I like that. That's really cool. So like obviously both the Bruery and Jeni's are super inspired by desserts. What are there flavors that are easier to work with to mimic other flavors? I know, like for example, like vanilla is getting super expensive. Like, is there anything else that you can use that is sweet and kind of provides a similar flavor? Because I mean, like now we're getting to the point where like if you're reading the comments, like Andrew's getting called like a mad food scientist. So it's just like, are there other tools that you guys have that you can kind of play with the ingredients a little bit and massage them to get flavors you want? For example, like Andrew's not just dropping frozen cheesecakes in when making this beer. Like it is.
Got it.
Yeah, there we go. Now we're talking. This beer, by the way, like we were talking a little bit earlier about serving temp. This is practically room temp, and this is the most enjoyable this beer has ever tasted to me. Flavors, all of them are just popping.
I think Jeni's has actually bakery cherry pie. I think is what she.
Yeah, that's what I have. I don't know what did you. What did
I got
you
one
have?
too. We'll get there.
Yeah, he opened up this guy, the cheesecake stout.
Oh, cheesecake. Yeah, I did. I got cherry pie.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
Someone
All
will drink
right.
these eventually.
I've always
yeah,
wanted to. I've always wanted to like. I work so. There are like thousands of people who have the job of being a nose, which is somebody who's very good at scent and can identify scents and works in a perfume company. But there are only like 100 perfumers, master perfumers in the world. And I've met like 8 of them and they're incredible. But I've always thought like, because vanilla is so messed up and it's like people are getting rich on vanilla, but like there's a lot of poor people making vanilla and it's like messed up on so many levels. And we work with only fair trade vanilla and like we want to get as close to the source we can. And it's so hard. And I just thought, well, maybe we should just go to one of these awesome perfumers and be like, let's make something that competes with vanilla. Can we make something synthetic? And would customers come along with that journey with us? And even if we could somehow connect it back to vanilla and continue to, I don't know. But it would be an interesting project to say, like, to just go completely out there and say, this is totally synthetic. And,
I know it's, sorry.
Yeah, and it's just an experiment.
I know it's not legal to sell ice cream or beer or anything made with this, but have you played around with tonka beans much?
Oh, all the time. I love tonka beans, and I was going to bring that up because I don't know why it's illegal in America. I love tonka, and I would love, and it's beautiful. Like, I don't know. I know that it caused like cancer, and if you serve it in high amounts to some mouse or something like that. But I don't know. Maybe it's something we need. Yes, exactly. We need to revisit that because it really is. It's almost like how like birthday cake is such a flavor. It's almost like it's that flavor, but from nature. Or pandan is another one. That's just incredible. And it's just a grass. And there's some people in Florida growing it that I know of. And I don't know anybody else in America, probably more. But pandan would be another one. It's almost like hazelnut vanilla. I mean, it's incredible. Have you guys done anything with pandan?
You guys want to run with that real quick too? Tonka?
What is tonka bean? It is illegal in the U.S. because of its corn content, I believe. And you occasionally read about these Michelin 3-star restaurants, I think like Alinea in Chicago or however it's pronounced, where they'll use it on a dessert and then get fined $20,000 and just pay it because they can. But yeah, basically it's either like a nut or a bean, and it's very high in compounds that are vanilla. They might be vanilla in themselves. It also has a little bit of like a coconut and cinnamon flavor to me. It's like it's how people say Tahitian is spicy, it kind of has some of those elements. For me, it's like vanilla, coconut, and cinnamon kind of mixed together, but you shave it on top, usually of desserts. But it can be on savory things, and it's a very interesting bright spice. And people sometimes
use the essential oil. And you can, if you have a good source, and I do, you can get essential oils that like I would never serve this at. I would never sell it, but I do make it like at home or for dinner parties, and I go to that because it's just beautiful and you're not allowed to use it in whatever, but that's what they make extracts out of. So if you were going to make a tonka bean extract, you would start with the essential oil and then do high proof alcohol. But that's what I use, and I do it all the time. Or you can wear it too. It's great. But you can find that in America. You're just not allowed. It has a label that says you can't use it in food.
Yeah, we can't sell any product that has it because we can't get formula approval from the federal government.
I could get synthetic, but like, what's the point? The whole point is that it's a beautiful natural ingredient.
Yeah. No, I'm really jealous every time I see like some of my friends from other countries, be it like Sweden or the UK or Portugal or New Zealand.
Yep.
And they're
like a tonka bean custard.
Like, I just heard about this thing like tonka bean style. I'm like, dude, I've wanted to use that for like
so
6 years. And I'm legally not allowed to use it.
Yep, we should.
I can get it, but I can't use it.
Once this stuff happens, it's really hard to reverse it. You know what I mean? Like, and somebody has to be the champion, and it's just impossible to reverse it. I mean, it's the same with things like ice cream standards. The federal government has ice cream standards that we have to abide by, which is, I completely understand why they happened, because at some point in the 20s or 30s or sometime, people started cutting butterfat. I mean, there used to be 6,000 dairies in the United States, and most of them were making ice cream too when they got, at the end of the day or whatever, after they got their butter and all this stuff done, they would use the leftover and make ice cream. And if they didn't have enough cream, they would use like a vegetable fat, and so call it ice cream. So I totally understand you can't call it ice cream if it has vegetable fat and not cream in it. But nowadays we have all these standards and like levels of ice cream, and I just don't agree with any of them. I would rather it be good butter fat than high butter fat, or the air content should be different on different ice creams, because sometimes you want it to be really thick and heavy and whatever, and sometimes you actually want that lightness. But if you get, I could make something that would qualify as economy brand. We would have to label it economy ice cream that is ethereal. You know what I mean? And then things like gelato, which are sort of a modern sort of import, have no federal standards. So because there's no reason to get behind it and do it. So it's it's sort of a funny thing. Same with like sherbet. You can only call something sherbet if it's like 5% milk fat and very specific. Totally understand where those all came from. But who's going to change them when they need change? Who's going to update them? No one.
I feel like if it was us, and there was like this, to use a thing in the comments, forbidden fruit, you have to label it like economy brand as the brewery, we would do that as like a joke, just do it, but make it like the most premium version of an economy product that you can get. And
it would be a $50 economy brand.
Just own it, just do it to do it. But
it'd be really funny. We'd have to call it like ice milk,
my wife just my wife just texted me that she's reminding me that she made me a Pandan chiffon cake recently.
Oh, yeah.
Not recently, a couple of years ago, no. So we've used Pandan leaves, but not in brewing. It's one of the few ingredients we haven't used. And
it'd be so good.
Yeah.
We are slowly. I was going to say we're not going to stop. Continue conversation. I know Terrence is really dying to get this one answered. I've seen it pop up a couple times. Favorite anniversary barrel variant.
Wow.
I think somebody asked Sucre earlier specifically.
Sucre rips. Bourbon. That's kind of a cop out, don't you think?
I think. I don't know. I can't. Rye's always good. I think maybe brandy was my favorite.
Yeah, the Portuguese was really cool. The rye whiskey was great. I don't know. Yeah, they're all fantastic. I thought the Scotch pottery was the most surprising, because I don't typically give a shit about Scotch, but here we are just enjoying this Scotch.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking just Sucre, but if we're going with all, I think that the red wine Attain was that was amazing. That red wine Attain was one of my favorites. I haven't tried the Madeira, the Soi Reserve that was finished in Madeira. I'm interested to try that. I haven't tasted it yet.
Got rips. Terrence had 3 barrel variants last night. How you doing today, bud?
So to bring it back to something that Jeni might be interested in and knows about, Jeni, what flavors personally of just ingredients or ice cream do you dislike? Like what things do you personally not like as far as different flavors that you see used commonly in ice cream specifically, or just ingredients in general?
Well, it's funny because I think I played a role in it a little bit, and that like I get. I mean, I want people to feel free to explore and do whatever they want to do, but I do get a little bit annoyed with like the like bone marrow ice cream and this idea that artisanal means crazy flavors. You know what I mean? And you know, in the early days, I experimented with everything. I mean, I was in a market where you would see dead animals, you know, on carts, you know, riding by you, and we would make ice cream with, you know, veal or whatever, just because we wanted to see what it was like. But I feel like I learned over time that those flavors the world does not need that. And you know, veal demi-glace and raspberry ice cream, it was fine, you know what I mean, but like it wasn't great or whatever. So sometimes those can get on my nerves a little bit. I grew up hating green mint chip. Like, you know how like, I don't know if you have siblings, but like if your sibling like loves something, you have to hate it. And so it's like ingrained in you. And that was me. It was just like full on hatred for it. So I didn't make it for like 20 years of ice cream making, but everyone loves mint chocolate chips. So I would make different kinds of mint. I had like 5 different kinds of mint. I have Savannah buttermint, which is like a salty butter, white chocolate mint, and like another kind of pink peppermint and a few others. But a couple of years ago, I did this sort of ice cream, like retros. I presented ice cream as if it was like in a history museum. And then we were, and also I was asking the question, like, what's more true, what you believe or the artifact? So the recipe or what you actually, you know, what you remember. And so we made all these flavors from people's childhood and whatever. Mint chocolate chip, green mint chip was one of them. And I was able to like get in my mind, get out in front of it. So it's like, there's this thing called like, you know, déjà vu, but then there's vujade, where like déjà vu is when something that is unfamiliar suddenly seems very familiar. But you can do the opposite of that, which is like to see something you've seen your entire life and see it with new eyes. And that was what happened to me over mint chocolate chip, green mint chip. And it's like my favorite. Like I can't even stop with it. Like, and I'll eat anyone's. Like,
I can't.
I love it. Like on a cone, on a sugar cone, like any of them. Mm-hmm.
For you, is mint chip spearmint or peppermint?
Oh, peppermint for sure. Spearmint ice cream tastes like over-chewed double mint gum.
Yep. Toothpaste and bubble gum. Over-chewed gum, yeah.
We've had some great success with mint beers.
Have you?
We did do a mint beer in the past that we decided to use spearmint instead of peppermint, and for some people that for a lot of people that can trigger a toothpaste.
Totally.
Like
we did
that said we did a mojito beer with lime and spearmint, and that most people.
There's a bug in my room. Oh yes, that would be good.
Yeah, so people like that. It was a sour beer too with limes and spearmint, and people liked that. But doing a stout with chocolate and spearmint was not. 2020 hindsight was not advisable.
We did the flavor we did with Tyler the Creator last year was actually a little bit of spearmint. So when I think about of like
what? Tell the whole story. You got to tell the whole story. Like you have to.
So Tyler loves our ice cream, and
Tyler is a first name basis.
And he reached out. I'm like, no, he's wonderful. He loves ice cream. He doesn't do drugs or drink or anything like that. So he eats ice cream. And so he reached out, and of course, I know I flew out. We talked about music. We talked about how ice cream, you can find the notes in it just like music and all of that. And it was lovely. And through this meeting, like, I don't know why, but I just knew the ice cream I needed to make for him. He loves like mint, and he loves that sort of salty butteriness of like salty caramel. And so I went home and I started experimenting with spearmint actually. And I was like, this is so weird because I've always hated spearmint in ice cream. But when I put salt in the spearmint, it changed it. And I realized that spearmint actually it has like a salty scent, if that even can possibly make sense. Whereas peppermint is very much the opposite. It does not have any of that sort of seawater, I don't know how to describe that, but it's almost like a weird saltiness in the scent.
Briny, like.
Yeah, it almost has that. So we did a like peppermint with a little bit of spearmint in it, and butter and white chocolate. And anyway, it was awesome. I loved it very much. But it was a combination of the two that like made it work.
Nice. The salt actually brings up something for me, which is fun. Like when we every time we taste your ice creams like for work where we're literally have a pen in hand and taking notes. But I never notice it when I'm just eating by myself, unless it's a salted flavor. Is your ice creams do have some salt content, and that definitely makes flavors pop. Like Ryan was asking the question earlier, like what do you do to enhance flavor? And like sometimes in beer, sometimes it's just water chemistry, being what salts you add, maybe certain types of calcium, being chloride or sulfate, or adding salt, which is also chloride technically. But yeah, those things can make certain flavors pop, be it sweetness or savoriness. That is definitely another thing that can take. But do you want to talk about salt content? Because that's fascinating. Every time I just have your ice creams to enjoy them, I don't notice any salt whatsoever. Every time I'm trying to dissect them specifically, I'm like, oh, this ice cream is kind of salty.
Yeah, it's weird how salt can. I mean, people will say sometimes like, oh, I love this flavor because it's not too sweet. And I'll say, well, it's actually just as sweet as all the other ones, but it has salt too. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times you can counter the sweetness with salt, but also a lot of times like things like caramelization, you almost don't even taste unless you add a little bit of salt. It just has a completely different flavor until you add a little salt and a little vanilla, like in our salty caramel. But even in the mint, I mean, what it does, I think, is it slows it down. I think it sort of makes it almost feel like, I don't know how to, like, I think in pictures a lot, but it feels almost like when you feel like you're slowing down because it's too hot and you can't walk anymore or something. Mm-hmm. That's how the flavor feels when you add a little bit of salt. It's sort of like it just slows you down. Where there are fast flavors too, and I would think like a peppermint without salt feels fast to me, like it feels zippy, mm-hmm. Versus like that. And I think salt, whatever it is, whether it's a chocolate chip cookie or whatever, it has that sort of softness that feels like it slows it down a little bit.
Yeah,
and there's salt in a lot of our ice creams. Even like a lemon will have just a little bit of salt, and what it does is it just like sort of makes it pop a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Like if salt at the level where you cannot detect it is like key, but if you can taste it immediately, that means you've added way too much. Be it in beer for like a salty style like a goza, or I'm assuming in ice cream as well.
Totally, yeah. Too much is just not good, and we've pushed it a little too far before. Like we have a biscuit ice cream, and pushed it a little too far, and it's you can't do that because once you notice it, then it's just too much. Yeah. It becomes but if it's not there, you can't. It doesn't taste like a biscuit.
We tasted the peach biscuit, didn't we? When we were thinking about beers.
Yeah, but they've done a couple.
Prescott, Arizona. The biscuit,
the zone.
All right. Cool. We're coming up on an hour and a half. I think we did it. I think we did the damn thing.
Yay! Awesome. This was fun.
Not too shabby. Jeni, thank you so much for joining us.
It looks like I've literally been at a bar for 3 hours.
Well, now you get to drink.
Get a straw, just like drink off the table. But thank you. Seriously,
any
thank
last
you so
comments
much
about Jeni's? Anything you want to talk about, promote?
Tell them to buy it on the. We've had a lot of comments. People are ordering the boxes.
How do we hear about Jeni's? How do people get Jeni's?
Well, go to Jeni's.com and it's JENIS. It's Jeni's.com, and we have a flavor right now called Sunshine that's amazing. We thought we made enough for 2 months. It's selling like crazy. We'll probably sell out by next week. So if you want it, you got to get it now. And it's gorgeous. It's one of those flavors that we've been talking about that's like tart, like the lemon. That is just it's just my favorite thing ever. So it's Sunshine. It's gray, but it tastes like sunshine.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. I think we'll see everybody here again next week. I think we're going to, Jeremy, the Sour J, is going to get back in the mix. We're going to do a little Master Cicerone panel. I think he's got a few guests that'll be coming on. So talking about all things beer should be pretty fun.
All things Chicharron.
All things Master Cicerone.
Oh, man. Well, thank you again,
Thank you
everyone.
guys.
See you later.
All right.